They say you never see it coming. I didn't. My wife pushed me down the stairs at our daughter's wedding, and everyone believed her story about a clumsy accident. But I made one call from the hospital that changed everything. 5 hours later, I walked back in with 3 men she never wanted to see again. My name is Stephen Harrison. I'm 59 years old, and I've spent the last 32 years building Harrison Metal Fabrication from a 2-man garage operation into a business that supplies structural components for half the construction projects in the Pacific Northwest. I've got calloused hands, a straight back, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had a solid marriage. My twin daughters, Ashley and Brittany, just turned 28. Ashley was getting married to a guy named Tyler Anderson. Seemed decent enough, worked in finance. The wedding was supposed to be the highlight of our year. It was supposed to be perfect. The venue was the Riverside Gardens estate, one of those places with stone staircases, ivy-covered walls, and enough marble to make you nervous about walking in dress shoes. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Ashley looked beautiful. Brittany stood beside her as maid of honor, and Patricia played the proud mother perfectly. Too perfectly, I'd realize later. She had that smile plastered on, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes, the one she'd been practicing in the mirror for months. The reception was in full swing when it happened. String quartet playing something classical, guests laughing over champagne, the kind of scene you'd see in a magazine spread. I'd stepped outside to get some air, needed a break from the small talk and the forced smiles. Patricia followed me, said she wanted to walk down to the garden overlook together, just the two of us. Sweet gesture, I thought. Romantic, even. The outdoor staircase leading down to the lower terrace was steep, maybe 20 stone steps with an iron railing on one side and a brick wall on the other. No one else was around. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the steps. I went first, taking it slow. These old knees aren't what they used to be, and I was wearing my good dress shoes, the ones with the leather soles that don't grip worth a damn. I was halfway down when I felt it. Not a stumble, not a slip, a push. 2 hands, flat against my back, right between my shoulder blades. Hard, deliberate, the kind of shove that meant business. I didn't have time to grab the railing. My body pitched forward, arms flailing, and then I was airborne for what felt like forever, but was probably only a second. I hit the stone steps hard, shoulder first, then my hip, then my leg twisted underneath me in a way legs aren't supposed to twist. The pain was instant, white hot, shooting up from my right leg like someone had jammed a railroad spike through my thigh. I heard something snap, felt it more than heard it, really. My femur. I'd broken enough bones in my line of work to know the difference between a sprain and a fracture. I came to rest at the bottom of the stairs, sprawled out like a broken puppet. Blood was running down the side of my face from where my temple had caught the edge of a step. My leg was bent at an angle that made my stomach turn. I tried to move, tried to push myself up, but the pain knocked me back down. Above me, Patricia was screaming. Not the kind of scream you'd expect from someone who just watched their husband fall. This was theatrical, practiced, the kind of scream that carries across a garden and brings people running. Help! Somebody help! He fell. Oh my God, he fell. She came down the stairs then, carefully, one hand on the railing, the other clutching her dress like she was afraid she might trip. When she reached me, she knelt down, and for just a fraction of a second, our eyes met. There was no fear in hers, no panic, just cold calculation, like she was checking to make sure the job was done. You tripped, honey, Patricia said, loud enough for the first guests who were starting to appear at the top of the stairs to hear. Her hand touched mine, cold and dry. Those stairs are so dangerous. I told you to be careful. I hadn't tripped. I'd been pushed, and she knew it. The pain was getting worse, spreading through my body like fire. I could hear voices now, people running, someone shouting to call an ambulance. Through the haze, I saw Ashley and Brittany pushing through the crowd at the top of the stairs, their faces white with shock. Ashley started down toward me, but Patricia held up a hand. Stay back, sweetheart, Patricia called out, her voice trembling perfectly. Don't move him. The ambulance is coming. Brittany didn't listen. She came down those stairs 2 at a time, her bridesmaid dress hiked up around her knees, and dropped to her knees beside me. Her hand found mine, squeezed it tight. Dad, she whispered, her voice shaking. Dad, what happened? I looked at Patricia, then back at Brittany, my younger daughter by 3 minutes, the one who'd always been able to read me better than anyone. Her eyes were searching mine, looking for the truth. I fell. I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Patricia's eyes flickered with something that might have been relief. The paramedics arrived within minutes, professionals who moved with practiced efficiency. They stabilized my leg, got me on a backboard, started in 4 for the pain. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I caught one last glimpse of Patricia standing in the garden, surrounded by concerned guests, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the devastated wife to perfection. But I'd seen her eyes. I knew the truth. And somewhere between the garden and the hospital, through the fog of shock and pain medication, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The hospital room was white and sterile, smelling of antiseptic and stale coffee. My leg was in traction, elevated and wrapped in enough bandaging to outfit a mummy. The morphine drip in my arm kept the worst of the pain at bay, but it couldn't touch the cold fury that had settled in my chest. A nurse came in to check my vitals, a tired-looking woman in her 40s with kind eyes. "How are you feeling, Mr. Harrison?" she asked. Like I fell down a flight of stairs, I said, managing a weak smile. She didn't need to know the truth. "Not yet. The doctor said you were lucky. Could have been much worse." She adjusted the foreflow. "Your wife is in the waiting room, if you'd like to see her." "Not yet," I said quickly. "I need a rest first. Maybe in an hour or so." She nodded and left me alone. The moment the door clicked shut, I reached for my phone on the bedside table. My hands were shaking, whether from shock or rage I couldn't tell, but I managed to unlock it and scroll to a name I hadn't called in months. Kenneth Mitchell. Ken. My oldest friend, dating back to high school, when we'd work construction summers to pay for college. He'd gone into law enforcement, worked his way up to federal prosecutor before retiring 5 years ago to open a private investigation firm. We'd stayed close over the years, trading favors when we could, keeping each other's secrets. I pressed dial. He answered on the second ring. "Steve." Ken's voice was sharp, alert despite the late hour. "Everything okay?" "No," I said, keeping my voice low. "Patricia pushed me down the stairs at Ashley's wedding. I'm in Providence General with a broken leg and a head wound." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "Did anyone see it?" "Just her. She's already told everyone I tripped." "But you didn't." "No, Ken. I didn't." I shifted in the bed, wincing as pain shot through my leg. "There's more. I think she's been planning this. The life insurance questions, the estate changes, all of it." Ken exhaled slowly. "Don't say anything to anyone. Not the doctors. Not the police, especially not her. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 5 hours, maybe less." "What are you going to do?" "What I do best," Ken said. "Find the truth." "And Steve?" "Keep playing the injured husband. Let her think she won." The line went dead. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling tiles, counting them to keep my mind occupied. Patricia thought she'd gotten away with it. She thought I'd be too grateful to be alive to ask questions. She had no idea what was coming. The nurse returned an hour later with a clipboard and a practiced smile. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to sign some forms for insurance purposes. Just standard documentation of the incident." I took the pen, read through the paperwork carefully. Incident report. Description of how the injury occurred. There was a blank space waiting for my statement. "Can I get a copy of this?" I asked. "For my records?" "Of course. I'll make one before I file it." She watched me write, her expression neutral. I kept it simple. Lost my balance on the outdoor stairs at Riverside Gardens Estate. Approximately 6:45 p.m. Slippery stone surface. I signed at the bottom, dated it, handed it back. The lie tasted bitter, but Ken had been clear. "Play the part." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Is there anything else you need?" "Actually, yes. Could I get copies of the paramedic report too? And any photos they might have taken of the scene?" I gave her my best sheepish smile. "My insurance company is going to want documentation. You know how they are." She nodded sympathetically. "I'll see what I can do. It might take a day or two." "That's fine. I'm not going anywhere." I gestured at my suspended leg. After she left, I used my phone to photograph the stairs from the hospital bed, zooming in on the details I could remember. The iron railing, the brick wall, the angle of descent. Then I pulled up the wedding photographer's social media page. Ashley had tagged the location earlier in the day, and sure enough, there were already dozens of photos posted. I saved every image that showed the staircase, the garden, the layout of the venue. My phone buzzed. A text from Brittany. Dad, are you okay? Mom won't let us come visit until tomorrow. She says you need rest. I'm worried. I type back. I'm fine, honey. Your mother's right. Get some sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. Another buzz. This time from Ken. Landing in 2 hours. Don't delete anything from your phone. Send me the venue name and exact location of the fall. I sent him the address, the GPS coordinates from the photo metadata, and a brief description of the staircase. Then I opened my banking app, something I should have done weeks ago when Patricia first started acting strange. Our joint account showed normal activity, nothing suspicious. But when I checked the linked savings account, my stomach dropped. 3 withdrawals in the past month. 20,000, 35,000, 40,000. All electronic transfers to an account I didn't recognize. $95,000 gone. The dates corresponded with days I'd been out of town on business, days when Patricia had been home alone with access to everything. I took screenshots of every transaction, every date, every account number. Then I checked our investment portfolio. 2 stocks had been sold last week, liquidated without my authorization. Another $60,000 transferred to that same mystery account. My hands were steady now, the shock giving way to cold focus. This wasn't impulsive. This was systematic. Planned. She'd been draining our accounts for months, and I'd been too busy with work to notice. I heard footsteps in the hallway, the distinctive click of Patricia's heels on linoleum. She was coming back. I closed the banking app, deleted the browser history out of habit, and set my phone face down on the bedside table just as she walked through the door. "Stephen," she said, her voice soft and concerned. She was still in her dress from the wedding, makeup perfect despite the late hour. I came back as soon as I could. "How are you feeling?" "I got hit by a truck," I said, keeping my voice weak. "But I'll live." She pulled a chair close to the bed, reached for my hand. Her skin was cold. "I was so scared. When I saw you fall, I thought I'd lost you." I looked into her eyes, those familiar brown eyes I trusted for nearly 3 decades, and saw nothing but careful performance. "It was an accident," I said. "Just a stupid accident." Patricia's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Yes," she agreed. "An accident. Thank God you're okay." We sat in silence for a moment, her hand resting on mine, both of us lying to each other with practiced ease. She thought she'd fooled me, thought I'd never question her story, never look deeper. She had no idea Ken was already on a plane, or that I'd found the missing money, or that every word she spoke was digging her grave deeper. Patricia left around midnight, claiming exhaustion. She kissed my forehead, promised to return first thing in the morning, and walked out with the posture of a woman who'd just dodged a bullet. I watched her go, then reached for my phone again. Brittany called at 12:30 a.m. "Dad, I know you said to wait until tomorrow, but I can't sleep. Something doesn't feel right." "What do you mean?" I kept my voice neutral, aware that hospital walls were thin. "The way Mom described what happened, it doesn't match what I saw." Brittany's voice was troubled. "She said you tripped at the top of the stairs, but Dad, I was watching from the terrace. You were halfway down when you fell. And Mom, she was right behind you. Really close." My heart rate picked up. "You saw it happen?" "Not exactly. I was filming on my phone, just random shots of the gardens for Instagram. I didn't even realize I'd caught anything until I looked at the footage just now." She paused. "Dad, I need to show you something. Can I come to the hospital?" "Not tonight. Tomorrow morning, early, before your mother gets here." I kept my voice steady, though my mind was racing. "Brittany, don't show that video to anyone else yet. Not Ashley. Not your mother. Nobody. Understand? You think Mom did something." It wasn't a question. "I think we need to be very careful right now. Can you do that for me?" "Yes." Her voice was small, scared. "Dad, what's going on?" "I'm not sure yet. But I promise you, we're going to figure it out together." I heard footsteps outside my door. "I have to go. See you in the morning, honey." I ended the call, just as a night nurse poked her head in to check on me. She adjusted my medication, made notes on her clipboard, and left me alone in the dim room. I stared at the ceiling, running through the possibilities. Brittany had footage, actual video evidence of Patricia pushing me. That changed everything. My phone buzzed again. "Ken, landed. Heading to a hotel near the hospital. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start building the case." I typed back. "My daughter has video footage of the fall. She's bringing it tomorrow morning." 3 dots appeared, then, "Perfect. Tell her to back it up to cloud storage immediately. Multiple locations. And Steve, this just became a lot more serious. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. My leg throbbed despite the medication, and my mind kept replaying the moment of the fall. The pressure of Patricia's hands, the calculated scream, the cold look in her eyes when she knelt beside me. Somewhere in the hospital, machines beeped steadily, marking time. In a few hours, Brittany would arrive with proof of what Patricia had done. Ken would examine the evidence with a prosecutor's eye. And then, we'd start taking apart Patricia's carefully constructed lie, piece by piece. She'd made one critical mistake. She'd assumed that because I trusted her, I was stupid. That because I loved her, I was blind. But trust, once broken, had a way of sharpening a man's vision. And I was seeing clearly now, maybe for the first time in years. Patricia wanted me gone. Wanted my money, my business, my life insurance. She planned it carefully, chosen her moment, executed it with precision. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I built my business from nothing by being tougher than the competition, by refusing to quit when things got hard, by fighting for every contract, every dollar, every inch of ground. And I sure as hell wasn't going to roll over now, just because my wife tried to kill me. Tomorrow, the fight began. And this time, I wasn't playing defense. Brittany arrived at 7 a.m. with coffee and determination written across her face. Patricia had left an hour earlier to shower and change at home, promising to return before my scheduled surgery at noon. The moment the door closed behind her, Brittany pulled out her phone. "Dad, I watched it a dozen times last night. There's no question what happened." She handed me the phone, her hand steadier than her voice. The video was shaky but damning. I could see myself descending the stairs, moving carefully. Patricia was 2 steps behind, closer than she'd needed to be. Then her hands came up, extended forward, made contact with my back. The push was brief but deliberate, both palms flat against my spine. My body lurched forward, arms windmilling as I tried to catch myself. The phone's angle shifted as Brittany must have realized something was wrong, but those few seconds were enough. Ken walked in as I was watching it for the 3rd time. He'd cleaned up since landing, wearing a dark suit that made him look like he'd never left the prosecutor's office. "That's the evidence." Brittany handed him her phone without a word. Ken watched it once, then twice, his expression hardening with each viewing. "This is clear intent. Premeditated assault, possibly attempted murder, depending on her financial motive." He looked at me. "Steve, I need you to tell me everything about your insurance policies, your business assets, your estate planning. Everything Patricia would gain if you died last night." For the next hour, I walked him through it all. The $2 million life insurance policy we'd taken out 5 years ago. The business worth somewhere north of $8 million, with Patricia as my beneficiary if I died. The house, paid off, worth another $1.5 million. Investment accounts, retirement funds, the whole portfolio. If I died on those stairs, Patricia would have been set up for life. "And she's been pushing for changes recently?" Ken asked, taking notes. 3 months ago, she found a new estate attorney. Said our old firm was outdated, not aggressive enough with tax planning. She brought home documents to sign, and I signed them. I felt like a fool admitting it. I trusted her to handle it. Ken's jaw tightened. "I need copies of everything you signed. And I need the name of that attorney." Brittany had been quiet, listening, her face growing paler with each revelation. "Mom was planning this," she said finally, "for months. This wasn't just a moment of anger. She was setting it up. That's what we're going to prove," Ken said. He pulled out his own phone, made a call. "Yeah, it's me. I need you to pull surveillance footage from Riverside Gardens Estate for yesterday, specifically the outdoor areas between 6:30 and 7 p.m. Also, I need background on an estate attorney." He paused, listening. "No, this is personal. I'll explain when you get here." "Who was that?" I asked. "Thomas Berkeley. Used to work cybercrime for the Bureau. Now he's private. If there's footage from the venue security system, he'll find it. If Patricia's been communicating with anyone about this, he'll dig that up too." Ken checked his watch. "He's 3 hours out. In the meantime, I'm going to visit that estate attorney's office, ask some questions." "You think the lawyer's involved?" "I think a woman planning to kill her husband would need legal cover for moving assets around. Let's find out how deep this goes." Ken stood, squeezed my shoulder. "Steve, you did the right thing calling me. We're going to build a case so tight she won't be able to breathe, let alone lie her way out of it." After he left, Brittany sat beside my bed, holding my hand. Dad, I'm scared. What if she tries again? She won't. Not now that we're watching. I squeeze her hand back. Brittany, I need you to do something for me. Go back to the reception venue if they haven't torn down yet. Take photos of those stairs, measure the height, document everything. Can you do that? She nodded. Ashley's going to want to know what's happening. Not yet. Your sister just got married. Let her have one more day before this whole thing explodes. I met Brittany's eyes. And honey, thank you for paying attention, for recording that video. You might have just saved my life. I'm not going to let her hurt you again, Brittany said fiercely. I don't care if she's my mother. After she left, I lay in the hospital bed and thought about the woman I'd married 29 years ago. The girl who'd laughed at my terrible jokes, who'd helped me build my business from nothing, who'd held our daughters when they were born. Somewhere along the way, that woman had disappeared, replaced by someone who could push her husband down a flight of stairs and not lose sleep over it. The door opened. Patricia walked in carrying flowers, her smile bright and hollow. I brought your favorites, she said, setting the vase on the windowsill. How are you feeling? Better, I lied, watching her performance. The pain's manageable. She settled into the chair beside my bed, reached for my hand. I called the office, told them you'd be out for at least 6 weeks. Bob Henley said he'd handle the Henderson project while you recover. Bob Henley, my business partner, the man who'd been with me since the beginning. That's good. Thanks for handling that. Of course. That's what wives do. Patricia's smile never wavered. We take care of each other. 5 hours later, I'd be returning with 3 men she'd never expected to see again, and her perfect smile would finally shatter. The surgery went smoothly, or so they told me. I woke up in recovery with my leg immobilized in a proper cast, metal pins holding the shattered bone together. Patricia was there when I opened my eyes, playing the vigilant wife, but I could see the calculations running behind her concerned expression. Ken texted around 3 p.m., coming to the hospital, bringing company. Be ready. By 5 p.m., I was back in my room. Patricia had gone to get coffee, and Ken walked through the door with 3 men I'd never seen before. Except the look on Ken's face told me these weren't random colleagues. Steve, these are the 3 people Patricia prayed would never show up in the same room together. Ken gestured to the first man, late 50s, graying hair, expensive suit. This is Detective James Cartwright. He investigated the death of Patricia's father 30 years ago. Ruled it an accident at the time, a fall from a boat dock. Cartwright's expression was grim. Your wife was 15 when it happened. She told investigators she saw him slip. But there were inconsistencies in her story that bothered me for decades. I never had enough to reopen the case, but I never forgot it either. The second man was younger, maybe 45, with the hard look of someone who'd survived something terrible. Michael Brennan, he said, shaking my hand carefully. I was married to Patricia's friend, Linda. 3 years ago, Linda took out a life insurance policy on me without my knowledge. 2 months later, I had a car accident. Brake lines cut. I survived, barely, and when I started asking questions, I found out Linda had been coached by your wife. My blood ran cold. Coached. Patricia taught her how to play the grieving widow before I was even dead, Michael said. I had recordings of their conversations. Linda's in prison now, and I've been trying to connect Patricia to other cases ever since. The third man was older, 60s, with the bearing of someone who'd spent a career dealing with liars. Richard Sullivan, he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. I'm a senior insurance investigator. 5 years ago, I denied a claim for a woman named Susan Porter. Her husband died in a fall down their basement stairs. The circumstances were suspicious, the timing convenient, and when I dug deeper, I found Patricia's name in Susan's phone records. They'd been in contact for months before the death. Susan Porter was Patricia's college roommate, Ken added. After I started pulling threads this morning, I found connections to 4 other suspicious deaths or near deaths, all involving women in Patricia's social circle, all involving falls or accidents, all with substantial insurance payouts. I stared at the 3 men, my mind reeling. You're saying my wife is part of some kind of murder network? We're saying she's been teaching women how to kill their husbands for years, Cartwright said bluntly, and getting away with it because the deaths looked accidental, because the women played their parts perfectly, And because nobody connected the dots until now. Ken pulled out a folder, set it on my lap. The estate attorney Patricia took you to? He's represented 3 of these widows. The financial structures are identical. Rapid asset transfer, offshore accounts, life insurance policies with forged signatures. It's a system. We couldn't touch her before because we couldn't prove she was directly involved, Richard Sullivan explained. But now we have you, a living victim, video evidence. And with your permission, we're going to use your case to bring down the entire operation. The door opened. Patricia walked in with 2 cups of coffee, saw the 3 men standing around my bed, and froze. The color drained from her face. She recognized them, all of them, and in that moment, she knew everything had changed. "Hello, Patricia," Detective Cartwright said quietly. "I think it's time we talked about your father's accident, and a few other accidents that keep happening to men around you." Patricia sat in the chair across from my hospital bed, her hands cuffed in front of her, 2 police officers flanking the door. Detective Cartwright had arranged this meeting, thought it might help if she knew the full scope of what we'd uncovered. I'd agreed, but only because I wanted to look her in the eyes one more time. "You can't prove anything," Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Those men are making things up, connecting dots that don't exist." "We have your father's insurance file," Cartwright said. "The one where you're listed as the beneficiary, even though you were only 15. Unusual for a teenager to be named instead of the surviving spouse, don't you think?" Patricia's jaw tightened. "My mother didn't want the money. She was grieving." "Your mother didn't know about the policy," Cartwright corrected. "You forged her signature on the beneficiary form. We had a handwriting expert compare the documents. It was you." Before Patricia could respond, the door opened. A woman in her early 60s walked in, elegant despite her obvious distress. She had Patricia's eyes, the same bone structure, but where Patricia's expression had hardened into something cruel, this woman's face showed only sorrow. "Claire." Patricia went pale. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Patricia," the woman said softly. She turned to me. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Claire Donovan, Patricia's older sister. We haven't spoken in 30 years, not since our father died." Ken had mentioned his sister, said she'd been estranged from the family, living in Brussels. "Why now?" I asked. Claire sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "Because Detective Cartwright found me 3 days ago and told me what Patricia tried to do to you, and I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore." She looked at her sister with tears in her eyes. "Patricia, I saw you. That day on the dock. I was in the boathouse getting Dad's fishing gear. I saw you push him into the water. I saw you hold his head under when he tried to surface." Patricia's face drained of color. "You're lying. I was 12 years old, and I watched my 15-year-old sister murder our father," Claire said, her voice breaking. "I was so scared, so confused. You told me it was an accident, that I'd imagined it, that if I told anyone they'd take us away from Mom. So I stayed quiet. I stayed quiet for 30 years while you became this person who helps women kill their husbands. Why come forward now?" Patricia's voice was venomous. "Because you were about to kill another good man, and I couldn't let that happen." Claire turned to Cartwright. "Everything I told you is true. I'll testify. I'll tell a jury exactly what I saw that day." Patricia lunged forward, but the officers grabbed her before she could reach her sister. "You ruined my life," Patricia screamed. "Dad was going to leave us with nothing. I saved us. I saved you." "You murdered him," Claire said quietly, "and you've been murdering ever since." Cartwright nodded to the officers. "Take her back to holding. Mrs. Donovan, thank you for your courage." After Patricia was led away, still screaming threats at her sister, Claire sat beside my bed. "Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry. If I'd spoken up decades ago, maybe none of this would have happened." "You were a child," I said. "She terrorized you into silence. That's not your fault." Claire wiped her eyes. "Our mother never knew. She died thinking it was an accident. Patricia made sure of that, took care of her until the end, playing the devoted daughter." She stood, gathering her purse. "I have to go give my statement to the police, but I wanted you to know that I'm here. Whatever you need for the trial, whatever testimony will help put her away, I'll provide it." After she left, Ken sat down heavily. That was the last piece we needed. Patricia's sister as a witness to her first murder, video evidence of her attempting to murder you, financial records showing systematic theft, and connections to at least 6 other suspicious deaths. The DA's going to have the easiest case of his career. What happens now? I asked. Now we build the full case. Interview every woman in Patricia's network, trace every dollar she moved, document every death she was connected to. Ken's expression was grim. This is going to be national news, Steve. The Black Widow Network, they'll call it. And you're going to be the man who brought it down. I thought about Patricia screaming at her sister, still playing the victim, even with the walls closing in. Good. Let everyone see what she really is. Your daughters are going to need support, Ken said carefully. This is going to be hard on them. Brittany already knows the truth. Ashley's going to have to learn it. I close my eyes, exhausted. But they're strong. Stronger than their mother ever gave them credit for. Outside my window, the sun was setting over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere in the city, Patricia sat in a cell, her carefully constructed life collapsing around her. And for the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like a target. I was discharged from the hospital after 5 days. Ken had arranged for a private security detail, 2 former Marines who took turns watching my house around the clock. Patricia was being held without bail, but the investigation had revealed something that made everyone nervous. She wasn't working alone. Bob Henley showed up at my house 2 days after I got home. My business partner for 15 years, the man I trusted with half my company, walked into my living room with the posture of someone heading to a funeral. Steve, he said, not meeting my eyes. We need to talk. Ken was there within the hour. He'd been expecting this conversation, had warned me it was coming. Go ahead, Bob, Ken said, setting up a recording device on the coffee table. Tell Steve what you told me yesterday. Bob's face was gray, aged 10 years in the past week. Patricia came to me 8 months ago, said she was worried about you, about your health, about the stress you were under. She asked me to help her set up some financial structures to protect the business if something happened to you. My hands clenched on the armrests of my chair. What kind of structures? Offshore accounts. Asset protection trusts. She said it was for tax purposes, estate planning. Bob finally looked at me, and I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Steve, I swear I didn't know she was planning to hurt you. She made it sound like she was protecting your legacy. But you knew something was wrong. Ken interjected. When did you realize? 2 months ago. She asked me to change the business insurance policy, wanted to increase your coverage to $10 million, and make herself the sole beneficiary. I told her that wasn't standard practice, that we needed your signature for something that major. Bob rubbed his face. She got angry, said I was being difficult. That's when I started wondering what her real agenda was. But you didn't tell me, I said, my voice cold. I should have. God, Steve, I should have called you that day. Bob's voice broke. But she had leverage. 3 years ago, I made some bad investments with company money. Lost about $200,000 before I could cover it up. Patricia found out somehow. Said she'd keep it quiet if I helped her with the financial planning. I thought it was just paperwork, estate stuff. I never imagined she'd actually try to kill you. Ken leaned forward. Bob, did Patricia mention anyone else? Other women she was working with? There was a woman named Jennifer. Came to a few meetings with Patricia. Said she was a consultant. They were always whispering together, checking phones. I got a weird vibe, but didn't think much of it. Jennifer Price, Ken said. Her husband died in an industrial accident 4 years ago. Patricia was advising her. Bob went even paler. Jesus, I helped a murderer move money around. You're going to testify, Ken said. It wasn't a question. Full cooperation with the DA's office. Complete disclosure of every financial transaction Patricia was involved in. In exchange, they'll consider reduced charges for the embezzlement and obstruction. I'll do whatever it takes, Bob said. Steve, I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right. But I need you to know I never wanted you hurt. I was just trying to protect myself, and I made the worst decision of my life. I studied the man I'd built a business with, the man I trusted to have my back. You're out of the company. I'll buy out your shares at market value, but I want you gone within 30 days. Bob nodded, accepting the sentence without argument. That's fair. More than fair. He stood, moved toward the door, then paused. Steve, for what it's worth, I'm glad you survived. And I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to do the right thing when it mattered. After he left, Ken gathered his notes. The DA's going to use his testimony to establish premeditation. Patricia didn't just push you down the stairs on impulse. She'd been planning it for months, setting up the financial infrastructure to cash in after you died. How many others? I asked. How many other business partners or lawyers or accountants helped these women without knowing what they were really doing? We're finding out. Rebecca's following the money trails, and every account leads to another enabler, another person who should have asked questions but didn't. Ken's expression was grim. This network Patricia built, it relied on people being just corrupt enough to help without being curious enough to investigate. I looked out of my front yard, at the security guard doing his rounds, at the life I'd built that Patricia had tried to steal. I want her to go away forever, Ken. Whatever it takes. She will, Ken promised. Between your testimony, Brittany's video, Claire's statement, and Bob's cooperation, Patricia's never seeing the outside of a prison again. I'll make sure of it. The trial lasted 3 weeks and made national headlines. The Black Widow Network, they called it, and every major news outlet covered the proceedings. I testified on day 4, walking into the courtroom without crutches for the first time since the fall. I'd worked my leg hard in physical therapy, refusing to appear weak in front of Patricia or the jury. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Lisa Thornburg, walked me through that evening step by step. What I'd felt, what I'd seen, the moment Patricia's hands hit my back. Mr. Harrison, she asked, before that night, did you have any reason to suspect your wife wanted you dead? No, I said honestly. I trusted her completely. That was my mistake. Patricia's lawyer tried to paint me as a controlling husband, suggested I'd been emotionally abusive, claimed Patricia was a battered woman defending herself. But when Brittany's video played on the courtroom screens, showing Patricia deliberately pushing me without any provocation, that narrative collapsed. Claire Donovan's testimony was devastating. She described watching her 15-year-old sister drown their father, the threats Patricia made to keep her silent, the decades of guilt she'd carried. By the time she finished, half the jury was in tears. Michael Brennan testified about his wife Linda's relationship with Patricia, the coaching sessions, the insurance fraud. Richard Sullivan presented evidence of 4 other suspicious deaths connected to Patricia's network. And Bob Henley, looking 10 years older than when I'd last seen him, detailed every financial transaction he'd helped Patricia arrange. The defense had nothing. Patricia took the stand against her lawyer's advice and tried to play the victim, but Lisa Thornburg tore her apart on cross-examination. Mrs. Harrison, isn't it true that you took out a $5 million life insurance policy on your husband without his knowledge? It was for our protection. Isn't it true that you forged his signature on estate documents, making yourself the sole beneficiary? I was trying to simplify. Isn't it true that you pushed your husband down a flight of stairs at your daughter's wedding with the intent to kill him? Patricia's mask finally slipped. He deserved it, she snarled. 30 years I gave him. 30 years of playing the perfect wife while he built his little empire. I earned that money. I earned my freedom. The courtroom erupted. Judge Henderson had a call for order 3 times. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the 4 women stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, racketeering. Patricia showed no emotion as the judge sentenced her to 45 years without possibility of parole. Ashley and Brittany sat on either side of me as the sentence was read. Both my daughters had testified. Both had stood up to their mother in open court. I'd never been prouder of them. It's really over, Ashley whispered. Yes, I said, squeezing her hand. It's over. Patricia was led away in handcuffs, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. She couldn't hurt me anymore. Couldn't hurt anyone anymore. 8 months after the trial, I stood in the newly renovated offices of Harrison Metal Fabrication. We'd moved locations, brought in new partners, restructured everything. The business was stronger than ever, and my daughters had both joined the company. Brittany was handling operations, Ashley managing client relations. They were naturals, and watching them work together reminded me why I'd built this in the first place. Can stop by on a Tuesday afternoon, carrying a thick file. Final report, he said, dropping on my desk. Patricia's network has been completely dismantled. 7 women are facing charges. 3 have already been convicted. The other 4 taking plea deals. And Patricia? She'll die in prison. Her appeals have all been denied. Ken poured himself coffee from the pot by my window. You save a lot of lives, Steve. Every man married to one of those women, You gave them a chance to survive. I thought about the men who hadn't gotten that chance, the husbands who died thinking their wives loved them. I wish I'd figured it out sooner. You figured it out when it mattered. Ken raised his coffee cup in a toast. To surviving. To surviving, I echoed. After Ken left, I drove to the cemetery where Patricia's father was buried. Claire had requested his body be exhumed and properly investigated. The cause of death had been officially changed from accidental drowning to homicide. His headstone now reflected the truth. Claire was there, placing flowers on the grave. "I come every week now," she said when she saw me, making up for 30 years of silence. "He'd forgive you," I said. "You were a child." "Maybe." She stood, brushed dirt from her knees. "How are your daughters?" "Stronger than I expected. They're resilient." I looked at the headstone. "Thank you for coming forward. For being brave enough to tell the truth." "Thank you for surviving," Claire replied. "For being the one who finally stopped her." I drove home as the sun was setting, the same route I'd taken 1,000 times before. But everything looked different now. Clearer. The house I'd shared with Patricia had been sold, the proceeds split between Ashley and Brittany's trust funds. I'd bought a smaller place near the water, something that was mine alone, untainted by her presence. Brittany had invited me to dinner, said she was cooking. When I arrived, Ashley was already there, helping in the kitchen. Tyler, Ashley's husband, was setting the table. They'd weathered the storm together, and their marriage had survived what mine hadn't. "Dad," Brittany called out, "come taste this sauce. Tell me if it needs more garlic." I tasted it, made a face. "Needs way more garlic." She laughed, the sound pure and unburdened. My daughters had lost their mother, but gained something more important, the truth. And in that truth, they'd found their strength. We ate dinner together, talking about the business, about Ashley and Tyler's plans to start a family, about Brittany's new boyfriend who worked in construction. Normal conversations, everyday concerns. The kind of life Patricia had tried to steal from us. Later, standing on my deck watching the sound shimmer under moonlight, I thought about everything I'd survived. The fall, the investigation, the trial, the rebuilding. I'd lost a wife but gained clarity. Lost trust but found strength. Lost innocence but found purpose. Patricia had tried to write my ending, but I'd taken the pen back and written my own. And this new chapter, it was just beginning.